Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Ham, Professor Emeritus of Sustainable Tourism and Interpretation at the University of Idaho in the United States. As you know, the focus of this first day of the virtual conference of the WFTGA is on interpretive guiding and interpretation, and generally the future of tour guiding. For many of us, and not just guides and tour operators, but for virtually anyone who's involved in basically any aspect of the global tourism industry, this is not only an appropriate focus, but it's a very welcomed focus. After what you've suffered the last 12 to 14 months, what could be more uplifting than looking ahead to a brighter future? And that reminds me of a song that I quite liked in the mid 1980s. Performed by a rock band from Madison, Wisconsin in the USA. The group was called Timbuk3, and they performed a top hit worldwide called "The Future's So Bright, I Gotta Wear Shades." Now, if English is your second language, you might need that last part translated. It means the future's so bright, I need to wear sunglasses. And that's exactly what I think is going to happen in the near term. I think it, and I certainly hope it. Today, as I said, is the first day of the conference, the educational day, it's called, focused on interpretive guiding and interpretation. And this field, interpretation, has been a significant part of my professional life's work, both as a guide and interpreter, which I was for years, and also as a researcher and a professor and a trainer in nearly 60 countries. I know that some of you are already quite familiar with this word interpretation and what that means in terms of your profession as guides, but I'm also quite aware that many of you will be considering this word interpretation for the very first time in the context of professional guiding. And so I thought I'd take a few minutes to do a quick introduction to what interpretation is in the final minutes of my remarks today. And let me start by saying that both of the speakers who follow me today are professional interpreters. No, neither one of them works as a foreign language translator. That's not the way the word interpretation is used or intended in the context of the profession of guiding. On the contrary, Jane Beatty, who will speak first, is an expert in storytelling. And Jane's going to talk to you about the importance and the role of storytelling in professional guiding. To a visitor on virtually any guided tour, that guided tour is a kind of a story that's told by the guide. They process the guide's commentary, the things the guide says and shows to them, right? But they don't preoccupy themselves with trying to remember all those facts. Rather, what they do is they take away from it a sort of summary conclusion, an impression, a moral or morals of the story that are quite personal and unique to each individual. Lars Bjorkman is a seasoned veteran tour guide in both natural and cultural settings all across the world. And Lars is going to share his views on the importance of developing and delivering an interpretive experience for your visitors, whether you're in a city, a natural landscape of some type, or in a world-class facility like the Vasa Museum in Stockholm, Sweden, where he works today. And of course, he's going to share with you the challenges of delivering those types of experiences in an empty museum during COVID times. But what is this thing, interpretation, that Jane and Lars and people like me and many of you do? In your field, guiding, the word interpretation refers to the way you communicate with your visitors. More generally, interpretation is an approach to communication that's generally associated with people in leisure settings, or as I prefer to call them, free choice learning environments, where visitors on a guided tour are pretty sure that you're not going to give them an exam later and test their recall of the facts that you gave them or the things that you showed to them. On the contrary, what research shows, and there's been quite a lot of research on visitor experiences and interpretation, studies show that what visitors want and expect from a guided tour experience is to be provoked to thought. They want to make personal connections to the things that you showed and explained. They want to extract personal meanings related to those things. This is not just entertaining fact-giving, infotainment, as it were, as I know a lot of guides approach their work. Rather, this is a guide, an interpretive guide, who intentionally, strategically, as a matter of professional intent, is attempting to facilitate the process of meaning making in the minds of each and every visitor. So at its most fundamental level, you can think of interpretation as an approach to communication that attempts to communicate in a thought-provoking way to an audience that is completely free to ignore you. Now let me talk a little bit about the interpretation profession. Interpretation is a worldwide profession. It includes many tens of thousands of interpreters, interpretive guides, storytellers, employees in national parks, museums, art galleries, zoos, aquariums, botanical gardens, historic sites, cultural shrines, as well as, don't forget, breweries, wineries, art galleries, cheeseries, and chocolate factories. Just about anywhere people go in order to have a good time and learn something, there are interpretive guides. Interpretation as a profession has been around for almost 75 years. It's not a new thing. And it's been the subject of both teaching and quite a lot of empirical research. In fact, in many countries around the world, you can take courses at the university called interpretation or interpretive methods or interpretive techniques. You can even get a university degree in interpretation. So this is an established and well-developed profession that I know a lot of guides are only now just learning about, but you will find that you have quite a lot of interests that overlap with the field of interpretation. In fact, probably most of them. I want to give you a sense now of just the geographic reach of this profession by talking about some of the professional associations. These are organizations with members and programs. I'll start with the first and largest in the world, and that's the National Association for Interpretation based in the United States. But it has almost 7,000 members. And they come from 30 countries. And so it's not just a North American thing. And Interpretation Canada, just to the north of us, also has several hundred members, right? And just to the south of us is the Mexican Association for Heritage Interpretation, which is a new organization, right, that is now growing and already has a substantial membership and a very, very active publication and training program. Going back to the National Association for Interpretation, or the NAI, they are the world leader in certification programs. They have training programs and offer certification in a variety of categories, including the first is Certified Interpretive Guide, which Maricar Donato, that many of you know, is actually finishing now. She'll be shortly certified by NAI as an interpretive guide. Also certified interpretive hosts, certified interpretive planners, certified interpretive trainers are also part of the certification program. And NAI also, along with other organizations, offer sometimes monthly webinars on some aspect of interpretive guiding or interpretation generally. The Australian Association for Interpretation, or it's called Interpretation Australia, along with the Interpretation Network of New Zealand, together they have about 1,000 members. And there's also a global heritage interpretation organization called the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation, which includes these organizations from almost 100 countries. I should have mentioned Interpret Europe, Interpret Europe has 1,000 members and almost 57 countries represented in this one interpretive professional society of interpreters. The Global Alliance brings all of these organizations together with the specific purpose of enhancing the skills of interpreters and interpretive guides globally. Just last month, in fact, not last month, but just 3 weeks ago in early February, the Global Alliance held a 3-day global forum on interpretation, which was attended by about 300 people from around 7 different countries. Also, you're going to find, as you would expect with an established professional field, a lot of Facebook pages, too many Twitter accounts, many thousands on LinkedIn, the professional network that many of you know about. You will also find Wikipedia pages on interpretation, including one on thematic interpretation. I didn't develop it, but it's about my work over about 4 decades, developing the thematic approach to interpretation that some of you have already learned about from Maricar Donato, and probably more will as she continues to develop training programs for WFTGA. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. This organization is a perfect place for the field of interpretation to have a place, a role. The field of interpretation, the profession of interpretation, right, is old, established, it's seasoned, it's mature. It is focused specifically on what guides do every day in their work. My research in particular and my training focuses on what constitutes excellence in interpretive guiding, which we know from much research is not visitors remembering all of your facts. If you judge your effectiveness by that, you're dooming yourself to mediocrity or failure, but rather on the extent to which you provoke them to think their own thoughts and make their own meanings. And this is quite an exciting area of research and a practical methodology that most guides find rather appealing. So I hope you'll be interested in learning more about that. So with that, I'm now going to hand the rest of the day over to my old friend and a new friend, Jane and Lars, along with the conference facilitators. I want to again thank Alushka and Maricar and the WFTGA for inviting me to speak today. And of course, I certainly want to thank all of you for your kind attention. I hope it stimulated, provoked some thinking. Have a good day. Have a good conference. Goodbye.